there's more of a backstory there, and I think you're
Yes.
kind of leading into it now.
Yeah.
So, as is the story for many a great idea, you began in a garage.
Yes, we're like the garage band of donation centers.
You mentioned the donation center. What is the heart of what's the mission of Maine Needs?
The mission is truly just to make sure that people are going, that there are more people in Maine that have their basic needs being met.
I'd like to welcome our listeners to the Bolus Beat podcast. I'm Samantha Marinko, guest hosting for Greg Bolus. The Bolus Company is Northern New England's largest commercial real estate services firm with offices in Portland, Maine, as well as Manchester and Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We've been selling and leasing real estate in Maine and New Hampshire since 1975. This podcast is designed to provide insight into Maine's leaders, its movers and shakers. And speaking of leaders, I'd like to welcome Angela Stone to the Bolus Beat. Angela is the founder and executive director of Maine Needs, a nonprofit which formally began in October of 2020. Maine Needs is a grassroots organization powered almost entirely by a network of dedicated volunteers that strives to help individuals and families in Maine meet their basic material needs. In partnership with schools, caseworkers, and professional care providers, Maine Needs is able to reach people in all 16 counties. Angela has a Bachelor's of Fine Art in Design from Harrington College. Angela currently lives in Cumberland with her husband and 3 children. And if your middle child has anything to say about it, a family that may be growing by a furry friend in the near future. In her free time, which I can't imagine there is much of, Angela enjoys writing, painting, live music, or just kitchen dance parties with the kids. Welcome, Angela. Thank you so much for being here today. So your roots are in Maine, but you made a departure for a little over a decade to Chicago. So tell me a bit about what brought you out there and your time spent in the Midwest.
Sure. So I moved there, I think it was 2005, and lived there for about 13 years. And I loved it. I meant to move there for 2 years and ended up staying. I'm originally from Scarborough. And I fell in love with the city. I fell in love with the people. Midwestern people are very down to earth. I also, as of late, have realized that Chicago sort of, because I was in my early 20s, I feel like in many ways Chicago is where I grew up. Not as a child, but like my formative years as a young adult. And a lot of the things that I value are based in Chicago values, I think, which is the coming together of people and the belief that someone that you don't know is probably okay and fine, and someone maybe worth getting to know is, something that I started to feel growing, like living there. You know, you take the L train, you take the bus next to complete strangers, like many strangers every day, and you sit, thigh to thigh next to somebody that you've never met in your life, and you trust that you're all, just trying to get to work, or you're just trying to go where you need to go, and that you're going to get there. And I think that mentality sort of stuck with me, that understanding of we're all kind of in this life and this world together. It's something I went back earlier this summer for the first time with all 3 of our kids, and it's just really amazing. Like the Lincoln Park Zoo is free to the entire public, and it's the type of zoo that, in any other city you'd be paying quite a bit of money to get into, and you'd see only one group of people going to that zoo, whereas you saw all different, groups of people from all different walks of life, socioeconomic, culturally, whatnot, in this one place together, because it is free, and you have free museum days and free festivals, and I think that really stuck with me and played a role in my mentality in life.
I can see how that would translate into what you're doing now. Yeah. So after returning to Maine, you ended up in a meeting with the Maine Access Immigrant Network.
Yes.
Can you tell me how that meeting came to be?
Yeah. So I did move back the fall of 2018, And the summer of 2018 was when children were being taken from their mothers, mostly, at the border. And it was a policy put in place to be a penalty to deter people from seeking asylum at the border. And my kids were 1 and 3 years old, and it was incredibly upsetting to me. And I think to a lot of people, to think that a child could be taken away from their mother. And the thought of somebody taking away my own child and not being able to advocate in the language that the person taking the child away from me is speaking was particularly upsetting. And so I knew that I wanted to help asylum-seeking mothers, first off. And so I called a bunch of local nonprofits, and Maine Access Immigrant Network was the only one that called me back. Oh. And so I went in, which is fair. I have no no background in nonprofit or social work or anything along those lines. But they called me back, and they completely opened up their doors, their boardroom. They invited everybody that works there, and everybody that works there was at one point a asylum seeker themselves or a former refugee. And except for one woman who's from Vermont. And they opened up their doors, and I sat down in their office at their table, and I asked them, what do you need? How can I help? I'm decent on social media. My background is interior design. I can help the local immigrant population from a business design standpoint, I thought, or helping people moving into their apartments. I genuinely thought that's what I was going to help with. And then I realized they were missing really basic items. So 0 to 3 month clothing, diapers, menstrual pads, cleaning supplies, really basic cleaning supplies, soap, toilet bowl cleaner, disinfectant spray, body wash, shampoo, all of it. And so I started using the internet to kind of bridge that gap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I mentioned in my introduction that Maine Needs formally began in 2020, but there's more of a backstory there, and I think you're kind of leading into it now. Yeah. So, as is the story for many a great idea, you began in a garage?
Yes. We're the garage band of donation centers. In meeting with Maine Access, I learned what they needed, and I started meeting families. And one family in particular, they had they were from Angola. They had just left the family shelter, I think 3 weeks before, and they were sleeping on hardwood floors, and they had very thin bedding. They were sharing a toothbrush for 5 people. They had twin 4-year-old boys, 9-year-old boy, and mom was actually quite far along in pregnancy, and they were sleeping on the floor. And they had piles of clothes because everybody was donating adult clothes, so they did have adult clothes, and they had mugs because everybody's always getting rid of their excess mugs. So I noticed they had a lot of mugs. They had random plates, but nothing that was, where you could have a dinner and have everybody have a dinner plate. And they had a random mismatch of silverware, and it didn't seem like it needed to be that way, because I know that there are so many people that are donating these things, and they're donating them to places that have existed for many years, but the people who need them are not getting them at no cost. And that didn't make sense to me. So of course there's other organizations that are doing great work, and that they have a different mission. But I thought that we should try to figure out how to get the things that were leaving certain homes going into homes where the people cannot afford those items. And I was giving these 4-year-old twin boys animal figurines. They had no toys. They had no crayons. They had, not even a radio to play music, or a clock radio or anything. So it was January, and I gave them these animal figurines, and they were I've never seen 2 kids more excited about toys, really simple toys. They speak Portuguese, and they were saying each animal in their native tongue, and so excited going back and forth. And after meeting that family and seeing their actual apartment, I drove home, and I live in Cumberland. So I drove, through Falmouth to Cumberland. And I was driving past all of these large homes with basements and garages and closets and cabinets that are most likely overflowing with things that are not being used every day, or being used at all. And so I got online on a whim after, I guess it was months of asking in groups for what was needed for Maine Access Immigrant Network. And then I couldn't kind of keep track of my Facebook inbox. So I was like, I'm just going to create a group. And the group's name was Maine Needs. And the name is because I think that people should have their basic needs met. And we live in the state of Maine. So that started as a Facebook group in January of 2019. Wow. And then became an actual building and nonprofit in October of 2020. So.
Oh. So you founded it. Now you're the executive director. And when we'd first met, you had just expanded your family. You had your third.
Yes.
And so now you've got 3 kids. How do you find balance between family and, an organization that probably demands a good amount of time?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, there wasn't a whole lot of balance, to be honest. My kids were in daycare. So during the hours that they were in daycare is when I would throw myself into growing the social media, making the phone calls to various nonprofits on what they accept, what they don't accept before we had the donation space. And then once we had the donation space, the drop-off hours were they were entirely during daycare hours for me and a whole bunch of other moms. Mm-hmm. So when we started, it was, I think, a 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. drop-off, open, pickup time. And so I was there when my kids were in daycare. And now when I got pregnant with the third, we decided we needed to hire our first employee. And our first employee is Tara Blatch, and her role is the communications director. We know that most nonprofits start with an executive director, but for what we were doing, we knew that the communication aspect of connecting via social media was really important. And so that's the role that sort of took over what I did. And we found the perfect person. She has, we say that, I said that we were looking for the heart and soul of Maine Needs to be the voice and to continue on. And I think we've found that in Tara, which is a huge relief. So I went off and had the baby, and now she's a toddler. And I do have a lot more balance because the people who are involved, everybody, it's truly a community effort. It really hasn't been just me for a very long time. It was just me for the first, I'd say, 4 or 5 months. And then it became all of these other people that I didn't know, again, going back to that, strangers, people I've never met that had the same, void where they felt like they wanted to do more, and they wanted the world to be better than it was, and they wanted people to be looked after. And that's what grew it. It's not solely me. It's that there was a huge amount of people that felt exactly what I felt, which was we can do better and we can get these things where they need to go. And that's sort of the ripple effect that has taken place that has allowed, at this point, a lot more balance for me. I'm there, very infrequently at this point, and able to be with, I'm probably with my 1-year-old now more than I was with my boys when we first moved here. So.
All for finding the right people.
Yes.
Yeah. So you mentioned the donation center. What is the heart of what's the mission of Maine Needs?
Yeah. The mission is truly just to make sure that people are going, that there are more people in Maine that have their basic needs being met. And in this case, basic needs being clothing that fits, clothing that's warm, dry, clean, making sure that they have shoes, winter gear, boots, bedding, cleaning supplies, basic hygiene toiletries. Like, it is devastating how many people are going without basic cleaning supplies. And part of that is because there's not a set budget that is covered. Like, TAMP gives families that are going temporary assistance for needy families, they give a small amount to families, and that is used for housing. It's not used for getting the cleaning supplies and the hygiene supplies. WIC doesn't, care for women, infants, and children, doesn't cover cleaning supplies and basic hygiene. And so there's this block of need that is not really met by our social support system. And that's what we've seen more and more of. Like, the requests for cleaning supplies and hygiene supplies is really high. And we've created something called a cleaning kit, which members in the community can make cleaning kits. And they're about $10 a kit, maybe more if you buy more expensive cleaning items. But we've figured out how to keep it at a lower price point. And I just did the tally the other day, and it's almost 16,000 cleaning kits in the last 3 years. And they go to a lot of single moms, a lot of low-income families. And the caseworkers report, like, moms bursting into tears when they arrive with cleaning supplies because it's such a need, which is heartbreaking. And at Christmas time, too, they'll get a cleaning kit, and that's the thing that brings them to tears, which is really heartbreaking, because you think of all the needs and wants and desires around Christmas or the holiday season, and that's the thing that people are most grateful for. So that's one of the needs. Other things that we focus on are basic kitchen items for people that are leaving homelessness or leaving a domestic violence situation and moving into an apartment for the first time in a while. We definitely focus on toys that are really great for cognitive development for kids, imaginative play. So costumes for kids to dress up in and sort of escape reality for a little bit, especially for that toddler, early elementary age. The cognitive development would be puzzles and Legos and toys that some kids get and some kids don't, and you see the difference when they enter kindergarten. So we focus a lot on that. And we do art kits, because seeing that family, these little boys on a cold January day, that will always stick in the back of my mind, that there are so many kids all over Maine that just don't have a box of crayons or a stack of paper or coloring book, and that those simple things can mean a lot. And so we've done thousands of cleaning kits as well, which the community can make. Awesome. I don't know.
That's quite a mission.
Yeah.
So you're almost entirely volunteer powered, which I think is pretty unusual. And I think Maine Needs has already had over 1,000 volunteers. How do you think that Maine Needs has made this model work?
Yeah, I think for me, that has been part of the mission, is that I called a variety of places, and I had, again, 1 3-year-old kids, and a lot of the places where you can volunteer, they needed to do training for several hours or on very specific, at very specific times on a weeknight, or times when I would have kids with me, when most people would be getting off of work. And I really wanted to help, and I really wanted to volunteer somewhere, and it just seemed like it was too difficult for my life to make that work. And then the combination of that and the way that Maine Access Immigrant Network fully opened their doors to me and believed that I was useful, even though I didn't know how I was going to be useful, was really powerful. And I think, I wasn't a volunteer. I was an interior designer for 13 years, and I cared about people and I cared about what was going on in the world, but I hadn't made the switch of actually getting involved and doing something. And I think having this like open door policy where literally anyone at any point can come in on like we're open 6 days a week now and come in and be part of a shift and learn like right away. It's a very simple model. So you learn right away like what you can do, how to do it. And if you have a nice time, you can come back. Or if you just don't have a nice time, but you want to come back, you can come back too. But I think that really mattered to me, keeping that open door policy. And I think there have been volunteers that stepped up in major leadership roles where they're there constantly. They keep coming back. A lot of retired folks come in. We have teenagers that come in. We have people returning from college. We have teachers there in the summertime. You have a real mix of people coming in, and it changes each season. Like there's an ebb and flow to like the switch over from spring to summer and summer to fall. And the answer to that is we have wonderful volunteers. And I think it's because the mission makes sense, because the mission is so simple. And you also see the requests coming in. And as a person who wasn't exposed to exactly what these needs were on the level that I am now, it's really like compelling when you see what the requests are for and how much this is impacting people. And that, I think, for a lot of volunteers is sort of an antidote to heartbreak, to seeing what they see on the news, to reading about what's going on in the world. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like this restless energy that I think people have, that they've found a place to put it. And they found a place to like invest. So I think that's why we've been really lucky to be a volunteer led and run. I think we will continue to hire like stronger support systems for the volunteers in place, but I would actually hate to see this be just a full-time, like tons of different employees, because I think there's a spot for people who are sort of in that in-between, either in their life, maybe they have young kids, maybe they're retired and they don't want a full-time job on either end, mm-hmm. Or even a part-time job, but they want to be connected and participating in our community. So
yeah. And I think one of the things you said is the accessibility.
Yeah.
People can come in, they can bring their kids.
Right.
So you do make it easy. You really do accommodate anybody that wants to help.
And I think it started with me having like toddlers, mm-hmm. and knowing that like that in itself, at the time we didn't have daycare. And so in and of itself, like we wanted to have a little area where kids could even play. But mm-hmm. we have some like 9-year-old volunteers that are fantastic at filling requests and awesome. Sorting and organizing. So like we really have a range. I mean, mm-hmm. today I was in there this morning and there was a bunch of high schoolers that are coming in and putting things back and I don't know, filling the requests. And it's that especially for me to see that younger generation having a place to do that, and not like there's not a lot of other places where they could involve themselves, but like being that place that teenagers and middle mm-hmm. schoolers and elementary school kids can come in and sort of be the change that they want to see in the world as they get older. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. So Maine Needs really is like a melting pot. You've got such a good collection of different types of people in all different walks of life, which reminds me of something that you told me about, and I have to ask about because I think it speaks to your personality too. You'd mentioned stranger parties. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think this was me in my 20s in Chicago. I started doing this thing called favorite stranger parties. And basically I'd invite all of my favorite friends, but they had to invite somebody that nobody else knew. So they had to invite one of their favorite people to come to the party. And it was even open to like, if you meet someone that's just really cool, that's not your friend, you can invite them too. So they would come and we'd have this great time because there's sort of I don't know, there's this understanding that they're like well vetted from another person that you really like talking to and hanging out with. And yeah, you'd get to meet new people and you'd have new conversations, and I don't know, it mixes life up a little bit. When we first moved here, I truly have like probably 5 friends from high school that live here. But aside from that, and like we weren't staying best friends or like super close throughout the years. So I moved here with my Midwestern husband, and we didn't really have a community. So the people I did know, I asked them to invite all of their friends, and we had a party before the pandemic, and then we like didn't meet anybody for years. But I highly recommend them.
I feel like that really speaks to who you are.
Yeah.
So we talked about this a little bit, but clothing donations is probably the thing that is maybe most commonly associated with Maine Needs, but there's a lot more to it. You touched on some of those things. And you mentioned some of the kits, but kits is, I think, a big part of what you do. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the others?
Yeah, so another segment that we really focus on is tents and sleeping bags and items for people who are living outside, especially living outside throughout the winter. And we have seen that increase drastically since we started. I think everybody sees that driving around. And so we have kits like, we started with the cleaning kit, and then we realized, wow, people are actually making these and they're really needed, and caseworkers are requesting them all the time. And then we added on to that with the mini warmth kits. The mini warmth kit is a $5 gift card to Dunkin' Donuts, or you can do more. But the idea behind, everybody asks, why Dunkin' Donuts and why not a local coffee shop? Here's why, because there's Dunkin' Donuts everywhere throughout all of Maine, because we do serve all 16 counties. And it's where people who are unhoused said they feel most comfortable getting a cup of coffee. So we like to try and listen to that and ask those questions. It allows them to warm up on a cold winter day. It allows them to dry off on a rainy day. It allows them a bathroom to use, wash their face, whatever. And they can get a warm cup of coffee and a donut. So it's very simple, but it can be a break and just a shelter when there isn't a place to go. So the $5 gift card to Dunkin' Donuts, there's hand warmers in the mini warmth kit, chapstick, hand lotion, because hands get cracked and calloused during the winter months especially, and tissues because, again, runny noses in the winter. And so it's just like a little tiny kit, and it goes in a sandwich bag, and we can encourage people to make a lot of them, and we hand out like 50 to 100 to some of the street outreach teams, and they can go and make sure everybody has these things. And we've added on the art kit, which is all the basics, like kid scissors, construction paper, like a glue stick, crayons, markers, sometimes a coloring book, sometimes Play-Doh, so they can roll out letters and make little sculptures. But we just think kids, especially in the winter, should have these things on snow days, on rainy days. And we think, having that outlet to express themselves is actually very, very important. We do back to school kits. So just in August, September timeframe, we do like a mini backpack back to school kit for the elementary school kids. And then we'll do a bigger one for middle school and high school kids. And that's just basic school supplies. There are a lot of towns, people are confused about this recently. There are a lot of towns that fund school supplies for their students. Most of them do not. There are schools in northern Maine, in western Maine, that tell us that they have kids that share 2 colored pencils. So they match up the kids and they can share the colored pencils. And then during the pandemic, they were like cleaning them all in between classes. They have shared snow pants. So there are teachers that are on campus that are washing snow pants in between recess. So some other kid will get to play on recess that day. Because the reality is, we did this whole post called Snow Pants Are a Privilege. And it's really alarming how true that is. But if you don't have snow pants and snow boots, that means that you're the kid that is not able to play at recess with all of the other kids. That means that you're on the blacktop and you're not getting to sled on a nice snowy day. You're not getting to build the snowman. You're not wrestling with your friends. And, all of that is missed. And you become an outsider simply because your family cannot afford the cost of snow pants and snow boots every year, or sometimes twice a year, depending on how fast your kids grow. And that just seems like something we can solve. Like, we can't fix all of these we can't fix all of the hurt that people are going through and the misfortunes that people are living, but we can make a dent. And so the kits allow people to really contribute in that way.
Yeah. So people that are listening or watching, in addition to making kits, what else can they do to get involved?
Yeah. So we have been blown away, honestly, by how many people start their own mini fundraisers on our behalf. They start their own collection boxes. And in the beginning, we'd get people asking, like, do you mind if we fundraise for you? Let me just make it really clear to everyone, we don't mind if you fundraise on behalf of Maine Needs. We don't mind if you start a collection box. I would suggest narrowing in on what you want in the collection box. So just asking for clothes, you're going to have a huge headache. Don't ask for clothes. Just ask for, narrow it down. So if you're going to ask for waterproof gloves and mittens and hats, maybe you throw in warm socks, brand new pairs of underwear. Underwear is a huge need. We can never have enough underwear, truly. So as awkward as it is to have a giant box full of underwear in your shop or your brewery or your gym, it's awesome. And people do contribute, and we're happy to share it on our social media and thank you and drive people towards your business. We do have over 40,000 followers, so that can help some businesses. But mostly the businesses have helped us. And it's been really incredible how many businesses, schools, churches have dug in and helped us collect or fundraise on behalf of this need. So,
yeah, you do have a lot of buy-in from a lot of local businesses. It's awesome to see.
It's wild. I will say, when I was behind the Instagram and the Facebook and sort of running that, I couldn't keep track of how many fundraisers were happening on any given day. And I'm guessing Tara can't either. There's always something going on. And there's always a friend of mine or a neighbor that's telling me that something's going on that I didn't know about until that moment. So it really is, our tagline is Maine Needs, a community effort. And it really has become that. It has become a community effort.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you started in the garage, you ended up in a room.
Yes.
And now you are in a donation center that you're already busting at the seams.
Yes.
Where do you see Maine Needs in 5 years or 10 years?
Yeah. I hope with everything I have that we get, so we started with 2,000 square feet. A year later, we needed 4,000 square feet. We absolutely need 8,000 to 12,000 square feet somewhere as soon as possible. And we are looking. And we need it all on one floor, which is its own uphill battle. But we have a lot of volunteers moving throughout the space, putting orders together, and it needs to go straight out the door. So a larger space would allow us to take in so much more. We would be able to take in all 4 seasons, so we wouldn't have to let go of things when the seasons change in order to be able to fit the space. We would be able to host larger groups of people. We, at one point, we had 20 volunteers a day at our current space, and it was awesome because a lot of requests were getting filled, and caseworkers and therefore families and individuals were not waiting for things to be filled. And because of the parking, we share parking with other businesses. Because of our limited parking, we're not able to push out requests as quickly. We're not able to have 20 volunteers in a day or a shift. So I love the idea of a larger building so that we can have more volunteers every shift, and we can be like blazing through those requests and reaching out to more areas of Maine more regularly. You know, we do deliver, like we do get requests from schools and nonprofits, you know, all over Maine, up to Aroostook. We have volunteers that drive donations up to Aroostook and all over. But to be able to have a larger space means that we can reach more of Maine and more efficiently. And that is huge. I also really love the idea of, because the cleaning supplies and the hygiene items are such a huge need, having a space potentially where we make the actual cleaning product on site.
Oh, wow.
So using, you know, things like gallons of castor oil and baking soda and vinegar, and like really simplifying what we turn into a cleaning product, and having a label that teaches people how to do it themselves. Because if they can get access to like a dollar store or a Walmart near them, and they have the transportation to get there, they will now have this, you know, experience with using these products and seeing how they clean. And so I think that would be awesome to have basically a setup where we can, if we're really low on cleaning kits, we can actually make the cleaning supplies. And we could take in, you know, just yesterday, our operations person has ordered all of these boxes of snow pants and waterproof gloves and boots. And so when we get an order, the UPS and FedEx guys love us because they're like done with their day when they drop off at Maine Needs. They're like, we love coming here. I'm like, cool. But we get inundated with these huge boxes, and we have no place to put it all, or the boxes are taking over our entire lobby. So I think really a larger space allows us to do what we're doing, but on a much larger scale and so much more efficiently. I do think like there's also a need maybe to get a box truck in the future and have like little pop-up donation centers that caseworkers and street outreach teams would be able to access in different counties. I would love to also encourage anyone else that wants to do what we're doing to do it in another county or in another state. If anybody is listening from another state, I think the model of what we did is very straightforward, and it is working and growing. And I think there will be people that will always want to be part of it and help. So,
yeah, I think it'll be exciting to see what Maine Needs evolves into in the next 10 years or more beyond. So anyone that's ever visited your website or your social media has probably seen the phrase solidarity, not charity.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. So I grew up in the early 80s where you would go somewhere during the holiday times and, you know, they'd be ringing the bell, like, help the needy. I think that's a really old term, and we need to do away with it, because if you really think about it, like any person listening, any person you know has needs. We all have needs. We have material needs, we have emotional needs, we have physical needs, and therefore we are all needy. And the concept of that is very, it's distancing yourself from someone else. And the reality is, like, we need to actually come together and see that we're the same. And that's one of the biggest things that, just the idea of the same. So this started from a place of me wanting to focus on asylum-seeking moms. And what I quickly learned is that in doing that, I was focusing on all moms. And when I focused on all moms, I was also focusing on all men, all children. I was, the focus became anybody who has a need for shelter, for warmth, for clothes that fit, for shoes that fit, to soap up and wash off, to brush their teeth, to change their baby's diaper, which is, by the way, everyone. Yeah. Everyone has this need. And at the baseline of our needs, we want to be understood. We want to be cared for. We want to be seen clearly for who we are. And I think in this idea of, oh yes, I give back to the needy, or I give to charity, so everything's fine, and it's an equal playing field. And there isn't an equal playing field, but there is an equal amount of human sadness and human need. And I think when we connect to what our own needs are and we recognize, like, this is what I'm going through, and it's hard for me to even say that I need something or I need something more from the people in my life. If we can recognize that that is like a place of real vulnerability, but if we can access it, it's also a place of strength and connection. And I think it takes a lot, like our logo is a lady slipper. And when we were talking about this, I wanted something that spoke to the fact that people do go through really hard periods in life. And the lady slipper is a rare flower in Maine, and it actually germinates best when it's the coldest, most bitter winter. So it won't germinate, it won't bloom if it doesn't go through something really cold and bitter, harsh, difficult. That's what makes it bloom. And I think that we need to acknowledge the resiliency, the fight that is in people, and that is in people that are in much more difficult situations than we have yet to find ourselves in. Or maybe we have found ourselves in those situations. And I think paying attention to that it's not just about doing the right thing. It's about feeling like that person is just as much a part of your community as your neighbor that has a house down the street. That person is also your neighbor. And if you can connect to that, your world gets bigger. Their world gets bigger. And this feeling of loneliness that I think a lot of us felt during the pandemic especially, dials down. And we actually are more connected. And I think that's the route to actually fixing a lot of these problems, is recognizing that we all have needs, that we are all needy. Like, ring the bell, we're all needy, you know? And so I think that's, you know, it's a phrase that's passed around, but I think that's the root of it.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most thoughtfully considered logos I've ever heard. But it so well represents Maine Needs. Yeah. So you gave a speech recently, and I'm going to quote you to yourself.
Okay.
So you said, restore your spirit so you can keep caring at the level you are meant to. Mm-hmm. What does that look like to you?
So it definitely means taking time to pull back when you need to pull back. I think there's especially the people who are drawn to the world of nonprofit. You know, I was drawn to the world of design and art initially, so this is an interesting shift. I think I've always been a very emotional, sensitive person, but in seeing what the caseworkers see every day, caseworkers, by the way, should always be spoken about the way that teachers are spoken about, because they are like truly the network of our society. Like they're holding it all together for us. But caseworkers and this level of understanding about what's happening on a day-to-day basis with families, individuals, and the stories that they witness and share and hold and carry is really hard stuff, really hard stuff. And I think I've been so lucky to meet so many of these people, and there's just a lot of heaviness and hurt that they have to carry. And I think what I just want to say is that if you carry that every single day and you find yourself wearing down, feeling depressed, lacking hope, getting really burnt out, pay attention to that, because it just means that like you're human and you need a break and you need to take care of that like amazing fire and spirit that you have so that you can keep being the person that you are and keep caring. And I think like for me, so much of Maine Needs came from a place of heartbreak and also anger, rage towards like, why is it like this? Like, why are we letting this happen? This doesn't make sense. It's unnecessary. And like, we can fix this. And I still do believe that. But there are some days where you're really like burnt out and you need to just pull back. And it's okay. Like you should pull back. And I think a lot of people that are our volunteers that are drawn to like this work do get burnt out and do overdo it. And so it's important to like pay attention to that and do whatever you need to do to take a break. So
Great.
yeah.
So many good insights. Well, Angela, this community is very lucky to have you. You inspire so many, as is evidenced by the impact that Maine Needs has already had in a very short amount of time, and will undoubtedly continue to have for a very long time. So thank you very much for being here on the Bolus Beat podcast. It was so nice talking with you. I learned even more about you, so
Thanks,
it was
Samantha.
awesome to have you.
Thank you so much. This is amazing.
Good.
Appreciate it.
Good. Thank you. You can learn more about Angela and Maine Needs at the company's website, maineneeds.org, or on their Facebook page, or follow them on Instagram at Maine Needs. And if you'd like to learn more about the Bolus Company, please be sure to visit us at bolus.com. You can also find us on Facebook and LinkedIn and at the Bolus Company on Instagram and Twitter.